Hello, everyone. We are heading inside the mines to talk with the Amtrak team about how they rethink experience design with FigJam. We are just getting started at the top of the hour here. We are going to give everyone 3 minutes to join in. And so while you are joining us, please go ahead and open up that chat. Introduce yourself with your name, maybe your role, and where you're joining us from today. So while we do that, I will get us kick-started here. We're also going to have a poll where you can tell us whether or not you have traveled with Amtrak before. So go ahead and click the link that you see in the chat while you're opening that up and toggling it over to introduce yourself, and let us know if you've traveled with Amtrak before. I have taken many trips with Amtrak and always been delighted with them. We have folks joining here. We have Lucy joining from Southern Indiana. While we're doing that, let's get our panelists in here. Cate, where are you joining us from today?
I'm in Chicago, Illinois, in the Hyde Park neighborhood.
Lovely. Great to have you. Keren, what about you? Where are you calling in from?
I'm joining from Philly, Philadelphia, really close to William H. Great Macy Station, I think is the new name, 30th Street Station. Yeah, right near the rail yards.
Fantastic. We have Daniel from Philadelphia as well, so probably knows where that station is. And what about you, Parnaz? Where are you joining in from?
I'm located in New York, Park Slope area in Brooklyn, close to Prospect Park. A lot of green we got here.
Oh, lovely. Sounds very nice. We have folks joining from all over here. I'm Katie. I'm joining in from San Francisco, and I see Nate King joining in for the East Bay of San Francisco as well, and Lizzie also in San Francisco. We have Steve here from DC. We have Felipe from Central Florida. We have Nate from DC as well. Chicago represent. We got Chicago in the house with you, Cate. Love to see it. Thanks for being here, Meg. We have Anna from Brazil. We have Michael from Santa Ana, California. Oh my gosh, I'm just going so fast. I'm losing track. Samuel from Buenos Aires. And for those of you joining in, if you want to come and fill out our poll, go ahead and click the link to the that I just put in the chat and come join us in the slides for today and let us know if you've traveled with Amtrak before. We have someone who's traveled regionally with Amtrak. Someone has joined me in taking many trips with Amtrak. Michael, Harper, and Eric also. Big Amtrak fans. Great to have you here today. We have some folks, Daniel, who has never taken Amtrak. Now's your chance. If you're in the United States, come join us. And we have several folks who have traveled regionally with Amtrak, Jane and Chris here. Great to have you. More folks writing in here. We have Jennifer from Boston. Jane is in NYC, has traveled regionally. Fantastic. Oh, and I'm getting some note that the link isn't working. Let me try posting that again. Let me just grab that link here and see if that works when I share it this way. Sorry about that, everyone. But for those who tried that link and the first one didn't work, go ahead and try the one I just put into the chat, see if that one works for you. We have some folks in there, and if you can't, don't worry, it's not going to hurt your experience to not be able to click the link, so feel free to just follow along on your screen. But I'm seeing lots more folks getting in here and filling out our polls, and it looks like we have people who haven't traveled with Amtrak. Now's your opportunity again to try it out. But we also have a lot of people who are traveling regionally. We have Nick, we have Selah, we have Jason, Kala, Eric. Great to have you here. Great to see that you've traveled with Amtrak and are here today. Several folks have taken many trips with Amtrak. Phoebe, Lance, Anna, Philip, great to have you. And Natalie, Mark, and Aaron have traveled long distance. That is on my bucket list. I cannot wait to take that Chicago to San Francisco trip. That is definitely coming up on my bucket list here. Great. Well, we are 3 minutes past, so we're going to go ahead and get started and dig in. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for filling out this poll. Regional travel is pulling ahead, so great to know for the Amtrak team here who we have joining us in today. With that, let's go ahead and get started. Again, welcome everyone. We are heading inside the mines to understand how Amtrak rethinks experience design with FigJam. A few housekeeping notes before we get started. First, the question we always get, this session is being recorded and we will be sending it out via email and also posting it on YouTube on the Figma channel. So if you want to go back and watch this, share it with any of your colleagues or friends, you'll have that opportunity to do so and we will send that recording to you. As you have questions through today's webinar, so if you have questions for the Amtrak team, questions about anything that we're sharing today, go ahead and open up that Q&A button in Zoom webinar and we will be fielding questions at the end of today's session from there. So please post your questions there. We can use that chat just to have conversations, send feedback, answer questions that the panelists bring to you all. Open up the chat, and when you do that, change the chat from hosts and panelists over to everyone. That will allow us all to have a great conversation together, as we are already, with all of you joining us in and letting us know where you're joining from. And then last but not least, we will have hundreds of folks joining us here in that chat, in that Q&A, and also in the slides here, as you've seen. So we do ask that you be kind and you follow our code of conduct. We want to make sure that this is a safe and inclusive space for everyone. So please follow the code of conduct, and you can find that on the screen here. With that, we're going to formally kick off. Again, welcome everyone. We are heading inside the minds to talk about how Amtrak rethinks experience design with FigJam. I'm Katie Chambers, an advocate here at Figma, and I'll be your host today. But I'm most delighted to introduce you to the Amtrak team. We have our Amtrak experience design team here, and I'm going to first kick it over to Keren to introduce herself.
Hi, Katie. Thanks so much for bringing us here today. And it was really fun to see that live poll. I think there's a lot of you that we need to convince to take your first trip. So my name is Keren. I'm based in Philly, like I said. I've been at Amtrak for about a year and a half now. And I am a principal experience researcher. So in that time, I've worked on something called mobile document compliance systems, which are basically ensuring that our employees have access to the most up-to-date braking and signal rules, our safety bulletins, and more. I've supported work for our Consolidated Network Operations Center and our dispatching offices, helping our teams to get better at triaging during incidents, making informed decisions during service disruptions. And finally, the whole team on this call was part of reimagining how we think about our passenger information display systems. So I would say in layman's terms, that's just our arrivals and our departures boards that we share in stations. And right now, I'm in the middle of a multi-phase research project trying to better understand how we can improve communication with our customers ahead of getting to the station, as well as while they're on board the trains themselves. So my industry background is mostly in e-com and healthcare and insurance and telecom. So Amtrak was new to me. It's hospitality, it's public service, it's transportation, and it's been new in so many ways for me. And now I'll kick it over to Parnaz.
Thank you, Karen. This is Parnaz Rod. I'm the lead experience designer, and I have worked on many similar areas as Karen, since we are both on the same pod. And if you're wondering what is a pod, don't worry, we're going to get to the answer to that question in a little bit within the context of Amtrak, of course. And yeah, so safety and compliance, passenger, that we call it as like PIDs, passenger information displays, and also like building the design foundations. We get to that deeper also, what it means for Amtrak. And in terms of my background, it's been about a year and a half that I joined Amtrak. And before that, I actually been in freight railroad for some time at GE Transportation, which is now rebranded or like had a merger with Wabtec, now Wabtec, with Bose and Commerce. And I've been always a hybrid research and design, and now I'm like being more focused on the design space. Yeah, it's been a fun journey so far during the past year and a half. And I pass it to Kate.
Thanks, Parnaz. Hi, everyone. I'm Kate Kompare. So I'm also coming up on a year and a half at Amtrak, and it has been a whirlwind. I've had the opportunity to work on a line-side distribution project of assets in the mechanical yard, otherwise known as a vending machine for nuts and bolts and things like that. I've gotten to support a repair and return process for parts of trains. So thinking about, when a part needs to be fixed, from air conditioners to engines, how do we kind of take that into our yards and track it throughout the whole process and then get it fixed and back and working on equipment. I've done those status displays. As Karen mentioned, I've also gotten to do a little bit with our onboard displays, in particular in the Midwest region, what we have there, still working on that. I've had the opportunity to spin up a cross-functional research repository with some of our wonderful internal partners that we'll talk a little bit more about in a bit. And my focus area right now is on labor management. So taking a step back to map the entire process of how we make sure all our colleagues throughout Amtrak, but in particular kind of on the rails or in the stations, know where they're supposed to be working and when, and all of that good stuff. But I come from a background in consulting with very little transportation experience, but I found that any kind of enterprise transformation work that I've done, in particular in regulated environments like insurance, has been the most relevant for my time here so far. That's me.
Absolutely incredible. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for sharing your diverse backgrounds and the huge scope of work that you're doing. And also thank you for translating it into a layperson's terminology. The vending machines was probably the one that got me the most. Fantastic. Well, with that, we're going to dig in and learn. We learned a little bit about each of you. We'd love to learn a little bit more about your team at Amtrak and what you all do. So first, we'll just learn a little bit more about what experience strategy and design looks like at Amtrak.
Absolutely. So these are just some behind the scenes photos of our team here. It looks like that top right one, we're at Moynihan Train Hall in New York, and that bottom one, we're in DC Union Station. And it's not just our team, experience strategy and design, it's our partner team, innovation there as well. So first, I think it's important to understand Amtrak and then to understand how our team fits into Amtrak. So Amtrak is also known as America's Railroad. We're an inner city passenger railroad that was actually created by Congress in the 70s and tasked with providing efficient, effective intercity mobility, essentially. So we began our national operations in 1971, and with that, we consolidated multiple private railroad companies. Today, we go to over 500 destinations in 46 different states, as well as the District of Columbia and two Canadian provinces, and we operate over 21,400 miles of route. We actually don't serve 4 states, so I thought it would be really interesting if you would use the chat to guess which 4 states we don't serve. I think 2 of them are a little bit obvious, but yeah, put your guesses in chat. Very interesting. I think Amtrak is interesting because we're a federally chartered corporation. So we're operated and managed as a for-profit company, but the US government is our controlling shareholder, and our board of directors is actually appointed by the President of the United States and confirmed by the US Senate. So we're this really interesting public-private partnership. And 97% of the routes that we run on, the miles that we cover, are on tracks that we don't own. So we have to, our system has to be complex from the get-go. We have to work with partners from the get-go. We work with these partners known as our hosts. They include large Class 1 freight railroads, other smaller private railroads, commuter and regional passenger railroads that are owned oftentimes by city public agencies. So that's things like the Long Island Railroad in New York, Metra in Chicago, SEPTA in Philly, Caltrain in California, et cetera. So we have to always be aware of what those partners are doing, as well as our own trains. And so, yeah, a lot goes into making our trains run. Complexity and partnership is really just the name of the game. We have over 21,000 employees. We have 28 million passengers this year. And in our intros, you'll notice that you didn't hear any of us talking about designing the trains or, designing the routes or thinking about the tracks themselves, or even supporting what our booking or ticketing flows or .com experiences look like. Those are all other teams. They're all types of design that are extremely important, but it's not what our team focuses on. So we're a relatively new team. We're about 2 years old, and we're composed of experienced designers, service designers, and researchers. And we're really trying to elevate I would say in particular, the needs of the employees, right? What does their tooling look like? Is it usable? Is it efficient? Are we helping them to be the best version of themselves, during their day at Amtrak? So we perform really deep research in and around the Amtrak ecosystem, and our hope is to design really effective tools and products for our employees first and foremost, with the idea that happier, motivated employees who feel empowered and enjoy their tooling will ultimately trickle down to the passenger experiences as well. And so we're part of digital product management here at Amtrak. And like Parnaz was saying, we're actually separated into pods that govern sort of our focus areas. So those pods are focused on things like yard management, labor management, service interruptions and delays, and so forth. So that's a big grand scale of what we're doing. And we are all distributed so that we can, visit the various different locations. Sometimes we're at dispatching centers. I had a week where I was like underground the whole week. I had another week where I was in the rail yards themselves, not even close to the station. So we get to work in all sorts of physical environments, which have been it's just been so fun to have that built environment as part of what we are researching and designing for. I'm going to kick it over to Parnaz to talk about what our process actually looks like.
Karen, before we do that, we have to have the answer to this poll. What
Oh,
four
yes.
are we not in? We've
Yes,
had lots of great
you're
answers.
absolutely correct. So Alaska, Hawaii, South Dakota, and Wyoming.
Oh gosh, we had a combination of people. I think Nicholas probably got closest there, but Rose said Wyoming. So in aggregate, I think folks had got there. But thank you. Awesome. Over to you, Parnaz.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, so as a follow-up to what Karen was talking about, we are operating within like this pod structure. Each pod has an experienced designer, a service designer, and a researcher. And we are like basically covering or like working on different themes like compliance and safety, reporting to passenger communication during the delays when an incident happens, which is very common, more than what you imagine, to station design, to creating tool landscapes that is basically inventorying all the systems that we're working with. And all that with the goal of improving the efficiency within operation centers and making it more smooth to manage incidents and making a better life for our employees. And like many other design or strategy teams, we are running a three-stage processes. It's discover and connect, it's concept and strategize, and then in the end we prioritize and iterate on the solutioning. And within those, there are like, for instance, when we are within the discover and connect, there's a lot of ethnographic research, a lot of stakeholder interviews, workshopping, personal development happens. When we are like concepting and strategizing, there is a lot of prototyping, how might be questions, design requirements, and then once we get into prioritizing, FigJam also is like a great tool to use. We run a lot of prioritization workshops and future state storyboarding and how to enable the delivery teams to deliver the final solution that we are like coming into. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Cate. Yeah.
Thank you. So how do we operate within this giant organization? So our team is in the digital technology department, along with a number of other wonderful groups. So as Karen mentioned, the Experience Design and Strategy Group, or Experience Strategy and Design Group, I always flip those. We're particularly focused on the employee experience. So looking to really solve problems for our colleagues who are in the stations, yards, and onboard trains. So that's where our product design focus really is. But if you look on the slide on the left-hand side, you see XSD, you see us, but you also see that Customer Experience Group, or CX. They're more focused on that passenger experience. So any of you who have navigated to our website or app, that's really their focus area. In addition to those intelligent, talented, and passionate folks, there's a whole lot of other intelligent, talented, and passionate folks we work with, including these key collaborators. We've got the innovation team, which started right around when we did, maybe 6 months earlier, and they're really focused on the future of Amtrak. How are we going to rise to meet the occasion of the changes on the horizon? Then we've got the market research and more team. That includes the market research group, voice of the customer, and customer analytics. We've had the opportunity to partner with them quite closely on surveys and kind of fielding research itself. They've been a great partner. And then, of course, there's the development team, how all these things get built. They're in the process of adopting or kind of transforming into a scaled agile framework with PI planning, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. So they are changing how they work all the time in order to better meet the needs of delivering software. You'll see on the right-hand side of the screen, this is a dual agile framework that we have adopted because we feel it captures quite well how we're trying to operate. So we're about trying to be a sprint or even a PI ahead, working to discover and design and inform all the work that those folks are doing. And we'll be going out to PI planning next week, so wish us luck. We've got that coming up.
Good luck.
Thank you.
For that context, Cate, we have one of those intelligent, passionate teammates, Nate, from your customer experience team with us today. How fun.
Hey, Nate.
And with that, we're going to dig a little bit more into what the team is talking about here before we look at some of their FigJam boards and processes in depth. So we want to have a bit of discussion around the three key questions here. The first question is over to Cate and talking about what are the unique challenges of designing for the public sector?
Yeah, so Amtrak is a public-private partnership. It's quite unique in that way. So our funding comes from the federal government, state and local partners, as well as ticket sales and a myriad of other things. It's a complex environment. But being a public-private partnership, there are many things about us that are governed quite literally by the US government and local governments. So accessibility means compliance with the Americans with Disability Act, or ADA. So it's, baked into everything we do, both external facing and for our internal teams. We've got the Federal Railroad Agency or Administration, the FRA, that we are held accountable by. They roll up to the Federal Department of Transportation. There's also the Office of Inspector General, OIG, who examines everything we do. So in addition to the scrutiny of all of our passengers and customers, there's this added layer of scrutiny that we're always striving to exceed their expectations. Our CEO regularly testifies to Congress, which is kind of wild. It's a couple times a year. So really getting grilled on what we can do better as an organization. And digital technology can be a topic there. So that we feel a straight line in some ways to those conversations. In addition to that, working in the public sector, we don't have one audience that we prioritize above all others, like one kind of group that we're seeking out. And this can be particularly challenging because the ways our services are used across the continental United States is so different. We have that Northeast corridor with high-speed rail that we own all the track there, and there's many things we can do differently there that can't apply to the rest of the United States. So in addition to the kind of infrastructure elements, there's also people who are commuting versus like going on that once in a lifetime cross-country train trip, and they're all just as important to us. Beyond that, we have a variety of stakeholders within our organization, as well as kind of our state and local partners that have been referred to earlier. And we have colleagues who have been working within the organization for decades, which I think could be a stereotype about federal government. And it's true, there are people who have been here for decades, and there is bureaucracy that we must work within. But this, for us, is an interesting challenge. We are here to introduce new ways of working that for many of you who have spent time in startups or many kind of modern technical organizations, just these things really seem like the basics, these really design-centric things that we get to advocate for and implement in a way that feels appropriate for our organization. So it's a lot of exciting challenges, but some headaches, certainly. Keren's going to speak a little bit about some of the incentive challenges we have.
Right. When our team was talking about like what are these unique challenges that we've come across so far in our time at Amtrak, one tactical thing really stuck out to our team, and I just wanted to speak through it, which was when I was starting to do our first in-depth interviews with actual passengers and performing, that first round of research, I wanted to make sure that I was recruiting, in the Amtrak way, or collecting consent, in the best practices and Amtrak way, and the types of things that you do when you're just talking to customers. And so one of those things is incentivizing, right? Like you want to give people an incentive, something of value for their time. Thank you for giving us your opinion. Sometimes these interviews are really in depth where they're co-designing with us, or they're talking to us for an hour, and we're getting tons of qualitative feedback. And at that first session, we found out we actually can't give incentives to individuals because we're taxpayer funded. And so that's just not an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars. So that's just like one of the little examples of the ways that we've had to change kind of how we recruit, how we think about incentives, how we get people to want to give their opinion to us. And those are the types of small challenges that add up when you think about establishing a design and research practice in this way. We've gotten very creative. Candy's been involved. Lots of nominal things have been involved. So yeah.
Fantastic. And it looks like we have quite a few attendees who are also designing for the public sector. Aaron mentioned even in the chat that they're working in a similar capacity and that it's an interesting space. Yes, Jessie says the joy of small merch, certainly. Fantastic. Thanks so much for digging into that. And hopefully for those who aren't designing for the public sector, you can still understand some of these challenges and how you might approach some of your challenges that you're facing designing for the private sector in a similar way. But with that, let's go and talk about how the team has evolved over time. And Keren, I'll pass this one over to you to get us started here.
Sure. Like Kate said, we are in the process of a multi-year transition moving into the scaled agile world. And within that, design and research is moving away from a project focus to what we're calling a product focus. So a project and a product differ primarily in their scope, in their life cycle, in their goals. A project is a temporary kind of ad hoc, one-off endeavor. It has a defined start and end. It focuses on achieving very specific goals and delivering a very specific set of, features or tasks that we are designing towards. And then it ends. And maybe that project team will dismantle. Maybe they'll go away and come back, set it and forget it, and check in again on it in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, whatever the cadence. Whereas product, right, we're moving into a product world. That's the idea is that we're continuous and we're iterative. We're focusing on different metrics of success, different definitions of done or really never done, and trying to move into this space where we do really small iterative increments, and moving away from that finite goal-oriented place into continuous user-centered design. And so Figma has really helped us with that transition, not from a tooling perspective. Certainly it's a tool and it's helped in that way, but also in the change management of it's a totally different mental model when you go from the world of project to product. And Figma really helps that mental model because it is evergreen and it's evolving. And, a FigJam file or a Figma file is continuously updated, right? You create it with the purpose to update it, with the purpose for it to be collaborative. It's this idea of a living wall. And it's been a really new paradigm shift for a lot of our colleagues at Amtrak to say, hey, we're going to keep referencing this link and we're going to reference it over and over. And you might go back to it in a week from now and it's going to be totally, well, not totally different, but incrementally different with some either new insights, new questions, new findings. There's going to be something that has changed there, and it's more of a collaborative influx space. And it's becoming part of our rituals that we go to and look at these ever updating either journey maps or kickoffs or all these sort of shared objects that we have, product vision, et cetera, versus what used to be, in PDFs or spreadsheets that would be shared one time. And if there was even the slightest edit, we'd have to sort of reshare it with the whole distribution list, or you wouldn't always be alerted or updated if there were changes to a single or specific slide. So I think it's really helped us just embrace the continuous mindset shift. Moving away from that one-time use source of truth and more towards this iterative shared what would be if we had a physical office, that wall that everyone would be seeing the changes within. Kate or Parnaz, anything else you wanted to add here?
Covered it pretty well.
Yeah, I can't wait to look at some of those examples of those walls that you built. But before we do that, we want to lastly dig in here to what experience design at Amtrak includes. Parnaz, I'll pass this one over to you.
Well, cool. I'll try to be brief here to get to the templates. So as Kate and Karen were mentioning, there are three major different poles of user experience within Amtrak. There is CX, there's innovation, and there's our team. All of us are tackling the design and research questions, but from different angles, and all of us are working in tandem. And the thing that we always say is that the employees inherit a lot of the passenger pain points, and resolving the employee pain points will end up resolving the passenger pain points in a way or the other also. And Figma, when I joined Amtrak, Figma was new and it was just introduced to the org. So all these different three poles, we all came together and tried to build a knowledge base and on how best we can start adopting this new tool, and not just a new tool, new mindset, to have continuous iteration, to have live boards instead of handoff. And we created this within this agile, scaled agile space that we work. We started this community of practice for experience. And we try to navigate through this change management. And I think so far, Figma has been helping the org to basically start like beginning to think through how to share work and how to workshop across different departments and across a hierarchy of roles that we have here. And start to have a version history of all these decisions that we are making instead of just, having the call, forget about everything that we talked about and having to restart the conversation over again. And yeah, so I pause here and we can dig into the templates.
Yes, can't wait for that. It looks like we have a lot of folks on the call that are also on experience design team. So curious to hear about how that seems parallel to what you're doing. And of course, the notable differences. Every experience design team will likely look different. So thanks for experiencing the context of your team, Parnaz. But with that, we are going to dig into our workflows here. And we're going to start. So we're going to dig into 3 different workflows that the Amtrak team has set up with different boards that they're using for these processes in FigJam. A lot of these are going to be published on the Figma community for you to use yourselves afterwards. So look up for that in the follow-up email. But right now, the team is going to walk us through those different examples. So let's start with simplifying bureaucracy with virtual workshops. And I think this one's over to you, Kate.
Yes, thank you. And before I go into the specific example here, I saw there was a question from Juan around what's the approach to keeping everyone aligned across those focus teams. I was thinking a little bit of the example we're about to look at here. But in addition to what I'm about to show you, we also have a community that has been built around our kind of similar disciplines, the experience community of practice, which has been wonderful. And then the research repository that I mentioned earlier, across all those similar disciplines, we're all kind of putting our research reports into one place so that we're not kind of asking the same questions. But with that, I'll kind of set up this example for the simplified bureaucracy with virtual workshops. So here we have used the Moscow framework. That's the must, should, could, or won't framework to draw out a kind of group's perspectives on the needs for those passenger information display systems, or PIDs, or those arrival and departure boards, as they're more commonly known. So we were supporting this PIDs 2.0 team to kind of roll out a new approach to passenger information display systems. And Amtrak does get, as I mentioned before, funding from state and local partners. And some of our stations where these arrival and departure boards are located are completely managed by state and local partners. So Amtrak is really only able to say, hey, we have this resource here for you, but people don't have to adopt it, especially if it's not meeting their needs. So we wanted to, if we were going to try and have a cohesive system across our network, we wanted to really make it something that people wanted to adopt, were eager to use. So we reached out to our state and local partners to bring some of them together to talk a bit about their needs. And they're located, as I mentioned, across the US, but they have very different needs in addition to the geography. There's climate needs. What kind of weather are they getting? What will these displays need to look like if they're outside, 365? What routes do they service? Are there, 2 trains a day, or is it dozens of commuter trains throughout the day? Are they serving some of those kind of other partners, commuter rails, like things like Metra or Caltrain, if you will? And so they don't really work together on a national level. So this was an opportunity for us to bring them all in the same room to help them kind of understand where their common areas were, and then where there might be places that they might not see eye to eye, and there might be need for us to kind of compromise. And so we had been pushing our internal stakeholders to be more collaborative. So collaboration, Figma, FigJam go hand in hand from our perspective. So we were able to organize this workshop with our state and local partners, as well as like our internal stakeholders. And we used Moscow as the framework for our workshop. So as I mentioned, Moscow stands for what must, should, could, or won't be kind of considered in this case for the kind of PIDs 2.0 requirements. But in addition to just kind of jumping right in to that kind of what should this look like, we wanted to make sure that our participants had the context they needed to provide feedback that we would be able to use candidly. So I'm going to take us in to the top here, an agenda, let them know kind of what to expect throughout the session. We set a workshop mindset, much like when we were dialing into this call. We wanted people to be, nice to each other and like be open to hearing new and divergent ideas. We provided a definition of PIDs just so that there was a baseline understanding, because surprisingly, this is a tool amongst many things that when you say one thing, some people within Amtrak hear something else. So definitions are really important, we've found. We wanted to provide a high-level timeline for the PID's work. I have this blurred out here just for Amtrak privacy reasons, but we wanted to contextualize this for the state and local partners. We're working, at this stage here, but, however far into the future is when you can expect the new system to be built out. I'm going to take us back over to the left here. So we talked a bit about bureaucracy, people being at Amtrak for a while. And so that's all to say, some people were not familiar with FigJam. They had never used a collaborative whiteboard tool before. So we decided to start things off with a little warm up, kind of a fun question that was related to what we were talking about. But candidly, we probably weren't going to do much with these answers here, but we wanted people to feel comfortable just putting a sticky up there and kind of like ripping the participation Band-Aid off, as well as addressing any usage hurdles that might be encountered that we just couldn't anticipate. And I will say we did have, I'm going to say at least 2 participants who could not even load the FigJam link, unfortunately, just because of the really lockdown firewall situations at their kind of local organizations. They could only see our screen share, but we were able to find that out at this stage here, which was important to know, and then have them kind of submit things directly via the chat. And then myself or someone else facilitating the call would transcribe it. So we would make sure we would capture their points of views. Okay. So then we get over to our kind of core Moscow area. We set aside time for people to put their musts for these arrival and display boards at their kind of local stations, their shoulds, their coulds, and there were no won'ts, which I don't know if that was surprising or not, but it was what it was. We also had an area kind of for questions. I think there's always a concern that people will, in a workshop environment, maybe kind of take us off topic a little bit. And so we wanted to make sure we were capturing those thoughts and concerns if they came up, but having a place where we could kind of write them down and then bring focus back. But that didn't end up being needed in this environment. I think one of the most valuable things of this exercise was having our stakeholders on the call hear people's expectations for those musts to help kind of level set their plans with the expectations. And in some ways, it wasn't necessarily changing plans is what it led to. It was more changing communications and finding different ways to manage expectations about what was possible. And then, of course, we had a little next steps area where people could get a sense of what we were doing next. And I often find I'm live updating the next steps depending on what comes up in a workshop. So I'm just going to look through my notes here to make sure I'm sharing everything I wanted to share with you all. But yeah, we found it to be an overall success. And even after the call, I got an email from one of the people who was just kind of listening in from the States for Passenger Rail Coalition. So again, this is like a little oversight group, an oversight group that we encountered that was just watching the call. And they reached out to say it was a success. And they were so pleased to see the state and local partners engaged in that way. So it was very exciting. But that's what I've got to say about that. I get handed over to our next template.
Well, Kate, really quickly, I just wanted to say I watched Kate facilitate these sessions so masterfully. I listened in on a lot of these and supported as note taker. It really just continues to be very cool to me to sit in on a session and to have someone be like, I'm the representative of Maryland. Here's what Maryland needs. Like, I'm the representative of Massachusetts. Like, I just think that's very cool to have people there like that. So it's been very cool to see, and it's been cool to see how states speak to each other about their needs and especially border states and how they could share resources, and it's been very cool to be able to facilitate those conversations, which isn't the primary goal of our work, but just happens to be the byproduct of a well-designed meeting.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. And we have a lot of fans of the Moscow framework, Jennifer and Christine, as well as some folks, Kate, who are saying, Michael and Scott, who are saying that it would be really helpful to use this in their meetings. So thank you so much for sharing that. With that one, we'll go over to our next use case of standardizing workflows.
I think this one is me. Like we've been speaking about earlier, our team is relatively new, and so a lot of the work we've been doing is operationalizing design, operationalizing research, and making sure that we have scalable, repeatable processes, so that we're not, net new creating something every single time, and we're finding efficiencies. So I'm going to share two things in that process. The first is essentially what we're calling a kickoff workshop. So anytime that you need to gain alignment on, answering the question like, what are we actually doing here? Why are we all gathering together? This is something that we would use. So I'm just going to walk through this. And then the second one is a little bit about how we've designed our onboarding experiences for new individuals who join our team now currently and in the future. So first of all, this workshop, I just want to, Selah is on the line. I want to shout out Selah, who is the creator of most of this initial template, and then I'll show you how we've evolved that template as a team. First we have this duplicate before use for any of our templates. Please don't work in the template space, duplicate it and do your own thing. Keep this as is. And so we have these, tips and tricks for how you can use this template. Anyone on our team gets access to all of our templates for all sorts of facilitations and workshops, including kickoffs, onboarding, etc. You have a kind of like choose your own adventure for what types of workshops and templates you want to use. So just as Figma has their own template community that you could choose from, we've kind of created like Amtrak's own individual like Amtrak template community that you can use. We have these guidelines that build on what Cate was showing, which are sort of, we always want to have these, what are we aiming to do together? What are the rules of this space? How can we make it feel safer, focused, open-minded, and time-boxed? We've found to be really important. How do we make sure people are present? And it might seem pedantic, or it might seem like you're bossing people around to say these things, but we've realized that it's just really necessary to repeat. And I think people appreciate the reminders, and it helps them to focus. What I will say about these templates, you'll see different frames. There's a purpose statement exercise, there's a stakeholder mapping, there's a current state mapping. What we do is sort of like choose which frame is useful for our kickoff that we're going into, or our alignment session that we're going into. You don't have to use all four. It's just a suggestion to use them, but they're there for you if you need them. So I'll show you how I've evolved this template that we have into an actual live template live session that occurred. But before we hop into that, I just want to say, like, the goal of a kickoff doesn't have to happen at the beginning of a initiative, right? I think we hear the word kickoff and we think like it's the first order of operations. To me, a kickoff is anytime we want to make the invisible visible, right? Like in any product, in any team, there are thoughts, goals, words that are like trapped in our brains, in our colleagues' brains, that have not been verified by our other peers and colleagues. They haven't been put into the outside world. And it's not until we attempt to put down on paper or in a visual or some shared board what we're trying to do, can we actually see how closely aligned or apart we may be. So I use this kickoff not only at the beginning of a product design cycle, but really any time that we're craving alignment on what we should be doing. So like Cate showed, we always have like our cover sheet and then the agenda, how long we'll be spending, the goals of what we're trying to accomplish with this workshop. Who are your facilitators, in this session? Who will you be working with today? That's Pamela, who is our manager and director of UX, who attends and supports many of our sessions. And then those guidelines that I lifted from that template that I shared with you. I obscured, this purpose statement, but I do want to walk you through how we use this. So we time boxed 5 minutes for a passenger purpose statement and 5 minutes for an employee purpose statement. And this is new for me in the public sector, and I think this could be useful to those of you who work in this way as well. But our team really wants to make sure that our solutions, our ideas, are serving two audiences, right? And so there's always the employee point of view, and we have so many diverse employees. We have conductors, engineers, red caps, dispatchers, so on and so forth. We have so many different types of employees who serve different functions, and we want to make sure what we're designing serves them as well. Sometimes you could push something that's really great for the passenger, but actually makes the employee's life harder. And we don't ever want that to occur. We want to make sure that these goals are always sort of meeting the needs of both of our audiences when possible. So when we do have these alignment sessions, we always have the passenger purpose statement and the employee purpose statement. And we want to make sure we're like serving both of those needs. And in order to align on a purpose statement, before we can even write one, I'd really recommend having this sort of like raising of insights. And it doesn't need to be just from a research practice. Anyone can gather insights. Many people have anecdotal observations that they could place in here just from the time they've spent at a company. And so we really ask the team to elevate here, hey, when you're thinking about passenger information display systems, which I'm going to actually show you really quickly what those look like. But when you're thinking about these arrivals and departures boards that you see at so many of our stations, what are the common pain points that you've heard from passengers? And just elevate some of them so that we can really frame our purpose statement with a little bit more awareness of what you've heard around town. And then again, employee, when you're thinking about, and that's one of our employees updating a PIDs, when you're thinking about employee needs in passenger information display systems, what are the common insights you've heard and pain points that we've heard from employees? And with that frame, let's then begin to write our purpose statement. And the purpose statement is time boxed for 5 minutes. Everyone grabs a sticky, and it follows this Mad Libs process of we want to, and then we put in a goal so that what's the outcome? So an example is so that passengers can consistently read signage across our network of stations, because what's the current challenge, problem, pain point that you in particular really want this to solve? And we will know we have succeeded when, what's something that's measurable here so that when we come to check in again, and when we do eventually deploy something, we could see if we've moved the needle in some way, shape, or form. So we want to improve the legibility of our in-station PIDs so that passengers can consistently read signage across our network of stations, because more unified signage leads to an increase in usability. And we know we'll have succeeded when the PID signage station scores, which we capture today, increases 1% year over year, something like that. And then we do the same one for the employee side. We want to make improvements to the process of updating our PIDs so that employees can efficiently update statuses, because today's systems are manual and fragmented. And we will know we've succeeded when station manager, and we've invented these metrics here as an example. But so we always have that sort of two-sided coin for our purpose statement. And something that we did differently for this alignment session was that out of our research, we learned that people use arrivals and departures boards for very specific reasons, right? When I say an arrivals and departures board, you might think it's really elementary, right? Like, oh, what more do you need? You need the train number, you need the route. Like, how could you not figure that out? But when we actually started talking to folks about their needs, they're actually, these boards are doing a lot, right? Some boards people look to when they want to be alerted of their delay. Some boards people look to when they want to understand their intermediary stops. Some boards people use because they prefer to read things in French or in Spanish and are looking for the English corollary. Some people want to understand the track or the platform, et cetera, et cetera. So we had tasks here. We had people vote on which PIDs, around the country and around different airports that they think do those tasks the best. And then we consolidated those into our purpose statement. So we would have the purpose statement, we'd have people vote on which tasks we think are done best, served best by certain PIDs boards at other train stations, our own train stations, and at airports. And then we folded that all up into a consolidated alignment. I see that we're running a little short on time, so I'll just show you really quickly for standardizing our onboarding. Something that we found was really important was that Amtrak has generalized onboarding for all employees and then onboarding for digital technology employees, of which there are hundreds, but we didn't have specific onboarding for what it means to be a design or research employee. So Parnaz ended up making this amazing template, which is really just an introduction of, hey, on your first day, here's who the team is, here's what our vision is, here's the family of other teams that you work with, here's what our leadership looks like, here are the guides that we've found really important and links to them in our intranet, here are the tooling that you need to get up to speed on and that we use for our work. And we ask everyone to do this asynchronous rating of their skill set. And the idea is that, it's meant to be filled out by oneself, and you're not meant to compare yourself to your team's rating. You want to really understand what you see your own gaps as today, what you see your strengths as today. This is built on top of a template that's already shared at Amtrak. And we added in this prefers collaboration, prefers to work independently. And then the different frames are kind of each area that we're really meant to support where we think people, where you think you fit there. And so what that ends up looking like is this big shared team resource where everyone on our team has this honest and transparent ranking of where they see their skills and areas to flex as. And when we have any initiatives that come up that aren't staffed, we can actually use this to inform like who should and should not be on that team, who can and cannot do those things, who needs support, who wants to work in collaboration. I'm going to pass it back to Katie for the next question.
Thanks so much, Karen. Yes, we're getting lots of love for the onboarding templates from Jesse and Natalie and Christy. Also a lot of love for that problem statement and for the PIDS board. So Tom misses the old departures board at 30th Street.
We've done a lot of research on that clacking sound, Tom. So a lot of people do. And what they miss is less the board and more we called it like a sonic reminder, that little like cue that lets you know that something has changed about your train, which is something that we are thinking about in the future. So I'm glad you said that.
Can't wait to see what that looks like in the future. Fantastic. Well, with that, we're going to dig into one more use case before we bring it over to questions. So start getting your questions ready. We see some already coming in the Q&A. But with that, I think I'm going to turn over to Parnaz to talk about introducing a new discipline to an enterprise org.
Thank you. I'll try to be really quick, save time for the questions. So as a like follow up to what Karen was talking about, when we are like introducing a new discipline to an organization, the work begins with building a lot of the foundations that normally it exists in a UX mature company, but sometimes you have to like build upon it. Sometimes you have to introduce a lot of ways of working. And in the path to create those, we were thinking how we can like use everyone's expertise and that they can like chip in. So that was one of the reasons that we started thinking through adopting this, not creating the wheel again. So we utilizing what was already in the Figma community, adopting it for our needs, introducing, how to onboard the new team members within a very complex environment that we have, one step at a time. And then building a lot of the design practices and our ways of working. So another template that we want to talk about pretty quickly is Team Identity and Brand Workshop. Shout out to Raksa Yin from the innovation team who initiated this. And again, we're not here to reinvent the wheel. We adopt everything that we have in our basket and make it to work for our use cases. So some of these exercises were exactly used as it was intended. Some of those were changed to what you see. And the initial goal was, okay, what is our brand identity? If we want to, for our team within Amtrak, to fill up a brand canvas, how would that look like? And then starting with like, okay, who are the audience that we want to put our focus on? And continuing on what is our essence, what is our vision, what is our mission, and trying to describe all those or identify or define all those together instead of going one person at a time, and talking through the attributes of what it means and trying to then translate all these different attributes into visual language. As you can see over here, we got like many votes, and we try to like democratize that building of the identity as much as we could. And since we are working very closely with our product management team, then what that means to work closely with that team and have a shared brand voice or identity. And then this was quite an interesting exercise to go through when we're talking about getting a shared understanding of who is a good service designer, what we define as a bad service designer. Same for experience design and different roles that we were in that room with us. And what are the ceremonies we want to set up. So there's a lot of setting the foundation over here that you see that helped us to build something that we can now patternize and we can use it as a pattern and move forward without thinking through all the processes one initiative at a time. And there is like the maturity discussion that was happening, that's where we think we are and what are the action items for us to step up. And yeah, these are like everything that helped us to come to a conclusion that, okay, we think we're authentic, we think we are accessible, we think we're appropriate, and yeah, all the different adjectives that we want to assign to our team as a whole. There is a lot more that I would like to share, but also I want to keep the time for the Q&A. Just mentioning that within that foundational discussion for design, we obviously started talking through different polls with the innovation team, with the CX team to come up with a design system, the foundations for a design system, but I'm not sure that's for a whole different session. We can talk through that for 2 hours. What you see is like our team specific asset library, making it that we're not reinventing the wheel, we're just using and utilizing what we have already and making it accessible for people who are not Figma savvy within our team, within our company, with these guidelines that how you may be able to use it, how you may be able to utilize what you want to utilize without needing to take time off a designer or recreating it yourself. And I'm gonna pause here, pass it back to you, Kate.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. There's so much to dig into there, and I wish we had a whole nother hour. But with that, let's get to some of the questions that you all have brought together. And the first one is a tactical question. Let's start with this one from Grigory. Kate, they want to know, in that Moscow exercise, did you have everyone vote for the features mapped on the board, or was everyone just putting their ideas and you were prioritizing later?
So live on the call after everyone had put the features and we had discussed them, made sure we all had clarity. At that point, we did have everybody vote on the musts and I believe the shoulds. So yes, we both.
Fantastic.
But I think did you limit the number of votes that folks could have?
Yes, I
Yes,
imagine I did.
I
limit the number
remember
of
that.
votes.
Yeah, so everyone had to be very judicious with what they voted for.
Yeah,
like
so
3 votes each.
Prioritization exercises. Love that. We have a broader question from Alexandra here. They're curious about your dual agile framework and wondering whether that means you have a team where devs work alongside UX on a team, or whether there's 2 separate teams that are working in that agile setting.
I'll take a quick pass at this. And I think I misstated earlier, it's a little bit more dual track agile is the phrase we like to use. But it's a work in progress. We're still evolving. Right now, we're focusing on kind of preparing the work for them. But over time, we hope to have more UXers embedded in the teams, although there are UXers embedded in those teams as well. It's a mix of both.
Fantastic. Our next question is from Lauren here. A great question about whether you're creating and sharing any static artifacts in addition to what's stored in FigJam. So you mentioned a repository earlier. Can you generally tell us about how you're organizing and sharing out these assets with your team?
I could take it first. Go for it.
A very first pass. So it's a hybrid method because it's a change management. Sometimes people are comfortable hopping in. There has been with many of our partners, they're interested, they're like cherishing it. Sometimes we have to translate those into the more like traditional or conventional, better use of the word, way of sharing within a PDF, within what should we call it, a PowerPoint. But the whole point is to change that mindset to work with live boards and be able to collaborate with us.
I do think this upcoming PI is a great example, though, of a moment in time that we are going static, right? Like hundreds of us are going to be working together over the course of 2 days in person. And to prepare for those days, we are printing for the first time elements of our employee micro journeys and macro journeys, and having people zoom into really specific areas to focus what we'll be working on. And so I do think there are these so far physical moments in time where we have been printing and sharing like static elements from those influx files.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. We're going to go to one more question right before we wrap up. And this one is, what qualities do you look for in new employees? This is Sarah asking as a new grad, curious what should they include in their portfolio for a successful interview. So maybe each of you can just share one or two things that you look for, and then we'll wrap up from there. So maybe over to Kate first.
Sure. Yeah. So in general, like not just at Amtrak, but when I'm in the position where I get to interview and hire, I love when the portfolio takes time to tell the story. What problem were you trying to solve? Who were you working with to solve that problem? What was that journey you went on? What would you do differently if you did it again? I love when people are candid about challenges they've had. It shows that kind of learning mindset. And then, of course, what was the final product? If you were measuring success, that's wonderful. I'd love to hear more about how successful it was in metric terms as well. So that's me.
Keren, anything you'd add?
I always look for curiosity and self-reflection. And I think curiosity in my mind is like a willingness to say, I don't know, or I haven't encountered that, or that's something I'd like to learn. Being on a lot of these interview panels, I do feel that sometimes people feel the need to have like fake confidence or like pretend like they did experience something. And I'd actually rather you say like, hey, that's really interesting, but I didn't get to encounter that because I was working in this type of industry that was unrelated, but that sounds really cool. And why don't you talk to me about it? So some of the willingness to say, I don't know. And I think a lot of what Kate said, which is like, I look for the so what of the portfolio is always what I call it. Like, what's the so what of this? Like you spent a lot of time crafting, the problem statement, the ideation, the collaboration with your teammates. But at the end of the day, like, so what? Like what actually changed either for your employee, passenger, user, whoever your end user is? Why did this matter? I love sort of starting with that and working backwards.
Fantastic. Parnaz, anything you want to add before we wrap up?
Really quickly, ditto everything that Keren said. Also personally, I like cherish collaboration a lot. So however that they can like say that, hey, I'm a team player, and within these scenarios and telling that story of how they play their role within a team, not just being the hero of the day. So keeping it real, keeping it honest, and if you're a team player, you can do anything.
So well put, and a great note to end on. Such a fantastic team players we have here and an incredible team at Amtrak. Thank you, Keren, Parnaz, and Kate for bringing us this incredible insights and teaching us about how you are rethinking experience design at Amtrak. It's been a true delight, and thank you all for joining us and bringing your wonderful questions. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.